can take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else. For each one should carry his own load. Anyone who receives instruction in the Word must share all good things with his instructor. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to please his sinful nature, from that nature will reap destruction. The one who sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Mankin, and I'm glad to be here this morning with you all. My wife is sitting out here. We've been married for almost 10 years, and my son is 4 years old, and I think our daughter's in the nursery right now. We've got a 4-month-old with us as well. So we are extremely glad to be here with you this morning. I also want to thank the in-laws for allowing us to stay with them last night on the farm. I grew up on a farm, so I really appreciate that kind of lifestyle and the way that those things go. But it sure is a blessing to be here with you this morning. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a background story on me, on why I got into doing this, and why I believe that this is a vital part of the future of society in general. But I grew up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Like I said, I worked on a farm but didn't grow up at the farm. My mom didn't want to officially live on the farm, so we lived in the city area. But my dad went there every single day. And I remember just growing up with things that normal people have that I thought I should have, but I didn't at the time. For instance, I'm not, as you can see, I'm not as old as I might look, but the thing is, I never had a microwave growing up. And that's one thing that everybody was like, those have been around for a while. We didn't have cordless phones in my house. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 16. We didn't have internet at my own house for a while until I was about almost out of college that they got that. We didn't have cable television. We had just the tube TV, but we did have a VCR. That was the one thing I wanted when I was 15 years old for Christmas. That's the major thing that I wanted to get that year. So with all of this technology that everyone else had, I thought, why don't I have this stuff? And I remember trying to talk to my girlfriend in high school with this really long corded phone. Do you remember those? And so I had to string it through the house and kind of go around the house trying to dodge things. And so everyone knew you were on the phone because there was a cord following you wherever you went. But when I got to college in the year 2000, I got to a dorm room that had cable television. I had my own cell phone. I had a microwave in my room. I didn't know how to use it, but I had it in there. I almost burned it down, knowing after the fact that aluminum foil does not go in the microwave. And so there's a lot of things that I was able to learn in college with internet, with email addresses, and then all of this new stuff came out by the end of my college career called Facebook, and we've all heard about that. So going through all of this stuff, I was trying to figure out, what do I need to put my trust in? What do I need to understand on how to live with all of these different technologies that I surround myself with, and how does that look? So I went to college with the purpose of getting a graphic design degree, and I got that. And I thought to myself, all I have to do now is figure out how to use this technology, talk to somebody that works for Coca-Cola, change their logo, and I'm set for life, right? And so I thought to myself, that's the only way to live, is to be able to do something that get other people to recognize what you're doing. And so I pursued that route. I went that route for a couple of years, and then God called me back to ministry. And ever since then, people keep asking, why is this technology, consuming my mind so much? And I thought, I don't know. I'd love to figure that out. So in 2007, I was asked to speak at a VBS in Nashville, and I spoke, and it was one of those moments that everyone walked away just wanting to learn more about this. Because we all are influenced in one way or another by technology, but we don't realize how much we are being influenced. So trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding is a verse I like to start with to let you understand that everything that you're learning from technology is not what you should trust in. Everything that you're learning from technology is only allowing you to understand things of this world, but not always of God. So there are dangers, but there are a lot of pros and cons. So previously we just read a verse talking about Galatians and Galatians 6 through 10, and it goes through a lot of things talking about deserting the gospel. And understanding if we do desert the gospel, what are we going after? Because the gospel can be defined as a set of principles or beliefs. But are your devices becoming your gospel? Because are the things that you hold in your back pocket, or the things that you put in your purse, or the screens that you put in your house, are those devices becoming your gospel? And I'm afraid to say that in some parts of this world, yes, it is becoming their gospel. And I want to kind of challenge that as we go through that. But also, as we go to the bottom of those verses in verse 10, it says, I am now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God. You have to ask yourself, is your Instagram account, is your Snapchat account, is your Facebook account or your Twitter account actually pointing people to God, or is it pointing people to you? So you've got to figure out what those look like and how we are supposed to manage and balance those things in our own life. So I'm going to be mentioning some things for you in this room. This lesson you're going to completely connect with. You're going to love it, and you're going to walk away and say, wow, that was great. I need to hear that. Some of you in this room that might be grandparents or great-grandparents, I'm going to say some words that you're going to say, I don't even know what that means. And that's okay. And I want you to understand that, because your grandchildren probably don't know what that means. And the best question to ask them is, what is that? And they will talk to you for a long time. And so you'll have a very long conversation going through that. So to begin today, we have to understand what media is. And media is the mass means of communication. It's a way that it's not just technology. It's newspapers, it's billboards, it's everything that receives information, whether it's on print material or whether it's in a digital format. And all of those ways are ways that we receive communication from our friends or family. And it's amazing because social media is so intricately woven into the fabric of teenagers' lives that they don't really know how to live life without it. They don't know how to go into the world. There's been times where when I leave the house, I do kind of the 3-pat, the keys, wallet, cell phone pat, just make sure that I've got them all ready to go. And then, there's people that will go to school, there's students that I work with on a daily basis that actually feel like they forgot a piece of clothing if they don't have their cell phone with them. And as we've seen in the recent news, that there are some things that are getting ready to be wearable technology, such as watches and glasses and all these other things that are connected to the World Wide Web. And then we're going to be wearing those on a daily basis. So the question I need to ask you this morning is, how is technology influencing your family? How much screen time do your kids have at your house? How much screen time do you have at your house? How many televisions do you have in your bedroom? How many laptop computers or portable devices do you bring into certain areas of your house on a regular basis? Do you go out to eat and the only thing that your whole family does is look at their phone the entire time? Do you go to the movies and then it says, please silence your cell phone, and your face is glowing the whole time because it's dark in there? Are you a texter and a driver? There's a lot of things that we've got to figure out on whether or not we do that or not. So sometimes I like to compare this to a Christmas picture. I mean, a lot of us in this room, I'm sure, like to take Christmas pictures, and I like to send them out to our families and our friends. But how many takes does it take to actually get the picture correct? You know what I mean? There's a lot of times for us as a family, we like to get our dog in the picture, so it's like, hey, Coda, look this way, and dogs don't listen. And so, you're just kind of trying to figure out how to get that right picture, and sometimes it takes hundreds and hundreds of pictures to get the right one. But what if your family if this represented your family? What if this was the real picture of your Merry Christmas card? Dad's just kind of staring at the television, and you got the kids on the iPads, and the mom's just checking her Pinterest, making sure all her pens are pinned, and just things like that. And so sometimes the reality of a Christmas card is very real, but sometimes that's not what we desire. But that is how our life really is. So how is technology influencing your family? 32% of parents think technology, like computers, cell phones, and video games, they think those things are making their family life better. And that's true. A lot of times we tend to focus too much on the negative part of technology. We don't realize that it can bring us together. There's certain video games. I know when the Wii came out, it got everybody up out of the chair and interactive and things that they can do together. And there's other games out there, like just little games you put on your phone, like Words with Friends or Flappy Bird, or just random games that you don't really care about, but the things bring some families together for those moments. But the problem is that 49% of students ages 11 through 17 say there's not any specific times when they make choices to disconnect or turn off technology so they can have a break from it. And 33% of parents agree with the same thing. Isn't it amazing that the kids, the students, are the ones that have a higher percentage of that? they say, hey, there's not any time that we turn these off. I don't even know where the power button is on this machine. I don't even know where, I've just got to unplug it if I do anything. Because families are using all of these things as shared experiences, and they're rewarding themselves with these things, and they want it to be a part of their life forever. So 33% of parents worry that technology and media is just a waste of time for their kids. They look at it and they think, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? Why in the world would we even go this direction? Why did I even buy this for them? Hey, or sometimes it's almost one of those things like, get out of my area. I just came home from work. That Dad comes home from work and he's just really tired, doesn't want to do anything but kind of sit on his recliner and watch Kentucky Wildcats and just kind of go that direction and sit down and say, hey, I gave you an iPad, right? I put an Xbox in your room. I gave you that 60-inch plasma in your room. Can you just go there for a minute? I just need some time to by myself. And they're like, okay. My wife and I were babysitting before we had kids for a family. And in that moment, I remember going to this kid's room. He was all of 8 years old, and he had a big 50-inch TV in there with an Xbox 360 and a Wii. He had an Apple MacBook Pro computer sitting on his desktop and an iPad sitting over on the other desk. And I thought, that's why he wants to get in trouble. When they say, go to your room, he's like, okay, not a big deal, and just, I'll just go to my room because I've got everything I want in there. And so sometimes we've got to realize how much accessibility we're actually offering kids or students or ourselves to an extent. Because 21% of parents say their parents have a double standard when it comes to technology. They want them to live in this perfect bubble in this world that we want them to make sure they follow all the rules, but they're not going to abide by it. We justify our time on technology as work. We justify our time on technology as making money, providing for the family, getting food on their plates. But over here, they're looking at it as this is a moment that I can learn, I can understand. It's a part of my curriculum now at school, and I'm connecting with my friends, the ones that I care about. And then over here, mom and dad are like, well, this is important for us because this allows you to go to that school that you go to. So, are you in control of technology, or is technology controlling you? I heard a speaker say one time that he was so focused on his schedule for that day that people became numbers to him. He would say, oh, you're a 2 o'clock. Oh, you're a 4 o'clock. Oh, you're a 6 o'clock. Oh, yeah, I've got you at 8:30 tomorrow. And he just forgot names. So he decided to kind of just throw all of that out the window and really start focusing on who they are, that face-to-face time, and realizing, hey, you're a person. You're not just a moment in time for my day. So the question I have to ask you, is this picture wrong? You look at that picture and you think, oh, that's cute. Granddad's on the computer, and then you look at the little kid and you're like, oh, that's great. He's reading the newspaper, fine print. That's what we need. That's how we need to change things over and kind of look at that. But ultimately, if we flip-flop the devices or the material in their hands, we would look at it as that kid. He's up to no good. What's he doing on the computer? He's probably doing something on there that who knows what's going on. And, Granddad, that's just a routine for him. He just reads the newspaper every day. That's fine. That's not a big deal. That's fine. And so we kind of look at that. But since the devices are in opposite hands, we think it's kind of adorable to look at that and kind of move forward from there. So think about this. How old were you when you got your first cell phone? Remember when cell phones started getting smaller and now they're like getting huge? I mean, like these are like the new cell phones, for things like that. And so you look at all of these things, and we think about, it's just amazing how that goes on. But the question that we sometimes fail to remember is, when you turn 16, did you get a Lamborghini for your first car? I didn't. If you did, I'd love to meet you. But, I didn't get a Lamborghini. And a lot of times when kids, whatever age you think's appropriate for the first-time cell phone owners, we're like, well, I just got to get them the iPhone 6 Plus because, that's what all the other kids are getting. Make sure to get the 128 gig. It's $800. But, we just make sure that my 9-year-old, he'll take care of it. He won't drop it ever, right? It won't go into the toilet, or it won't go smashed under the ground. So sometimes we think we've got to get the biggest, the best, the nicest thing out there because that's what everyone else is doing, right? But I wish that when my mom bought me a car at 16, it was not anywhere close to a Lamborghini. And so sometimes we think we've got to go that direction because the rest of the world is. But one of the most commonly misused devices ever created in the entire world is a cell phone. It was created basically to, you remember the bag phones and the car phones and the corded cell phones, and, it basically paid $30 a minute to use it. I remember my grandmother, when she got her first cell phone, she thought she would get charged just turning it on. So we were like, Granny, we can't get in touch with you at all because you don't have it on. She's like, well, I don't want to get charged. I'm like, well, you don't get charged for it on, but it just gets, beside the point. But we kind of went through all of those things, and we're trying to realize, what is it actually created for? To connect with people, to talk to people, to allow people to have a moment of conversation that, in other ways, they couldn't reach each other because they're in separate areas of the world. 90% of American adults, according in January 2014, this result just came out, 90% of American adults have a cell phone. 58% own a smartphone. 32% own an e-reader, such as like a Kindle or something along those lines. 42% own a tablet computer. So when, this stat, the numbers are just a little bit lower for teenagers, but a lot of times when your teenager comes up to you and says, Mom, Dad, everybody else has one, they're right. It's one of those moments you're like, man, you're right. Everyone else does have one in those moments. But the craziest results that I found among American adults is that 67% find themselves checking their phone even when they don't notice their phone ringing or vibrating. They did a scientific study on this, and it's called ghost vibrations. And so sometimes you're like, oh, my phone rang. Nope, it wasn't. Just a spasm, I guess. Or you're sitting there watching television, and you're like, oh, I heard that was my phone. And then you look over there, and you're like, nope, nothing. Your phone's black. There's nothing on it right now. Like, I'm sorry. But we're so used to that vibration or that ring that there's times when I've seen with students that if they have a special ringtone, it just is ingrained into their brain that even during a devotional or whatever we might be doing on a retreat or a camp or whatever, they hear that noise. You could play this over a loudspeaker, and everything from that second on would be totally disregarded because they are so focused on that noise. They don't know where it's coming from. 44% sleep with their phones next to them so they don't miss a call, a text, or an update. This is American adults. This is not teenagers. This is adults. 44% do that. 29% describe the cell phone as connecting them to something they can't imagine living without. So are we dependent too much on a device? I think so. But are we using the device for what God could use it for? I don't think so. Because one thing that we fail to forget when we're out with our families is that children learn cell phone habits from their parents. When you're sitting at home and little Johnny is sitting there at the dinner table with you and Mom and Dad are just like checking their this and doing this, that, and going through all of this stuff and making sure that they like this and follow this and pin that and reply to this and all of these ways of communicating, they continue to keep that as a priority at a dinner table. Now, a dinner table was created for a family to gather around and commune and to eat and to fellowship together as a family, but we're wanting to fellowship with people that aren't even underneath our roof. And I think we need to be aware of that, even when we're out to eat or even under our own roofs, our own houses at home. So are we surprised that technology is transforming the future of our generations to come? Why are we surprised about that? If we've seen it for being around so long and we recognize the problems and the pros and the cons, then why are we surprised that it is transforming the future? We just recently did a generational study at the church that I work for, and we focused on all of the generations within the church, and it was amazing because the millennial generation, those born from 1983 to 2002, these people, and they're basically 13 to 30, these people are viewed as lazy, arrogant, and selfish. Those are the top words that were described that generation. And so this is just one of the terms. So the term lazy for the millennial generation was 84% of the people born in that generation were described as lazy. 27% from the buster generation, 10% from the boomer generation, and 10% from the elder generation. Now, I shared this infographic with our church, and I had some people laugh. And I kind of, because I work with the millennial generation. And I was kind of set back for a second. I said, why are you laughing? And this lady came up to me and she said, well, I just want you to know that I was one of the ones that laughed at when you released that graphic. And I said, do you mind me asking why? She goes, well, I'm from the boomer generation. And we know how to take tests to make ourselves look better. And we love to pat ourselves on the back. And I said, oh, okay. I don't think you represent every boomer in the world, but, your perspective is now gave me greater value in understanding this. And so and then I came back to our students one night, and I said, what do you think about the world? The people within the church think that you're lazy. How does that make you feel? And I had one of our seniors, who's 18 years old, he stopped and said, I don't think that we're all completely lazy. I think that we're perceived as lazy because we have access to so much. But I believe that if the elder generation had access to what we have access to, they might have been perceived as lazy. And I said, we can't, survey that, but that could be a possibility. So I emailed one of the guys from Barna, and they did a lot of research with millennials, and they say that the millennial generation is the number one research surveyed, looked at, hovered over generation to ever live on this planet. So if we are looking at every single way to be able to figure out why they do what they do, we're probably going to find some of the bad things as well as some of the good things. But the society we live in, we love to elevate the bad because the bad can outweigh the good far too long than we ever could imagine. So are we living in an overprotected generation? Are we allowing things to be, do we have helicopter parents within this church? Do your kids go on something and you're just like, well, let me get my Apache helicopter and just kind of go over this camp to make sure everything is good so that if little Sally scrapes her knee that, I can rush in because the nurses there don't know as much as I do. Do we look over things too much that we don't allow them to figure out that stove is hot by putting their finger on it? Because the question you have to ask yourself is, how much time did you put into monitoring your firstborn child? I have a 4-year-old, okay? And so 4 years ago, I went to the store, went to Babies R Us, and we bought this monitoring system that had everything but a physical hand that came out to do something for the child. And so we were able to monitor my son and see if he was crying, see if he was, hungry, see if he was, flipping over the side of the crib, whatever it might be, making sure that he didn't do what we wanted him to do. And then what happens? The second child comes along. And you're like, well, I hope the stuff that I just bought for my first child still works for the second child so that, that we can all be safe. And then what happens? Third child comes along, and you're like, well, I think the first child is old enough to watch the third child so that we make sure that everything is okay within our household. And then what happens? The fourth child comes along, and you forget their name. You're like, oh, yeah, we had a fourth child. Where is he? He's somewhere around here. I think he's outside playing by himself in the street. So you kind of look at those things. And then so I heard an author, his name's Tim Elmore, he said, if we treat our kids as fragile, they will surely grow up to be fragile adults. And I think because of technology, we're giving them so much accessibility at times that they become as, Mom, Dad, Wi-Fi's down. Oh, my iPad broke. Just go get me a new one. I dropped my phone. It's cracked. Can you just get me a new one? Oh, yes. Let's take care of this. Let's go this direction. Because if you continue to go that direction, then we're just raising trophy kids. The kids that come in last place almost in the soccer league, but they still get a trophy, right? Yes, you understand what I'm saying, because a lot of times, everyone gets a participation ribbon, like, oh, you are awful at this, but congratulations, you paid your dues, you'll get a trophy, because we satisfy our desire for safety with a small device that fits in the back side of our pants, a little cell phone. We satisfy that desire because we've been convinced by social media that it's a necessity to stay connected. But there's a difference between social media benefiting your life and social media becoming your life. Because from the generation that we consider to be overprotected, we then created the selfie generation. And so from the selfie generation, that's the number one word from 2014, is we love ourselves. We're entitled. We love everything about ourselves. We want everyone to know exactly what I look like every second of the day. And we kind of go through that. But you have to ask yourself, if you do like to take selfies all of the time, is in Galatians 1, verse 10, are you trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. So here's some quick stats about social media in general. Facebook currently has 890 million daily active users on Facebook. Twitter has 288 million monthly active users on Twitter. Instagram, 300 million Instagram users that share 70 million photos a day. That's a day, not within a year or a month or a week, a day. And then there's always, for those that don't know about it, the sneaky Snapchat. 71% of Snapchat users are under the age of 25. So with all of that statistics and things like that, we have to ask ourselves, are we overconnected? So if you realize you are, if you realize that it is an addiction in your life, or you don't realize it, but today you're like, wow, that could have been something I could be doing more useful things with. Here are some just simple solutions to kind of go through this. Be aware. 1 Peter 5:8, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Be aware of the dangers, the guardrails that you need to put in your life as you go forward in those moments. Number 2, set limits. Hebrews 12:11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness for those that have been trained by it. So you understand that if you set limits on something, you're going to say, hey, don't do this in this time frame. But just make sure that it is something that you have access to, but don't let it become a part of your daily routine. So set limits. And last, set aside. Mark 1:35. Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place. When was the last time you actually turned something off and allowed God to use that moment for Him to reveal something to you, rather than wasting a lot of your time with a device? So who you follow determines where you go. Who you follow physically and who you follow digitally determines where you go. Who you're going to hang out with, who you like to retweet, who your friends are, all of that determines where you go. Because we have freedom in Christ, and that freedom gives us the ability to reflect Jesus, even in the small parts of life, so that others may watch, learn, and follow. We have that ability. Everyone in this room has that ability to be able to reflect what God is doing in their life. Because our life outside of this church, outside of these church walls, should not be a place to escape, but a place to engage. It's not our opportunity to say, I'm only going to listen to God inside this building. You're able to listen to God, share God's Word, and let others learn about God through you, through your social media, through whatever that looks like for everyone. All of those 300 million followers on Instagram, and all of the many, many, many people that post every single thing every single day. So I want to close with a final verse. This verse speaks volumes to today's society. 2 John 1:12. I have much more to say to you, but I don't want to do it with paper and ink. For I hope to visit you soon and talk with you face to face. Then our joy will be complete. Isn't it encouraging to know that there is so much to be said on social media, so much to be learned from social media, but also there's such an important aspect to be able to have those face-to-face moments, the moments where you sit down and you can witness somebody pour their heart out to God, the moments that they're able to sit there and say, I can't do this alone. I need something much larger than I am. I need a church family. I need God. I need someone to show me love in a way I've never experienced love before. So I ask you this morning that if there's something that you are addicted to, something that you have just fulfilled your brain with for so long, and you want to let go of that, you don't want that to be a burden in your life anymore, and you need the prayers of this church, or you need to be immersed into God's awesome ability to be able to be baptized, whatever that looks like for you, if that is something that you think is a necessity, which it absolutely is, to be able to go on into the kingdom that God's called us to live in, I ask that you come forward this morning as we stand and sing.